Marcus had been a school janitor for over 20 years, and in all that time he'd grown accustomed to the silence of empty hallways after dark. The clatter of his mop bucket echoed through the corridors like a ghostly drum, and the faint squeak of his shoes on freshly polished floors was often the only sound he heard past midnight. He didn't mind. In fact, he preferred the solitude. Kids during the day were loud, messy, and careless. At night, the school was his kingdom, quiet, still, and predictable. At least, that's what he thought. It was a bitter winter night when things changed. Snow tapped against the tall windows, and the old heating system groaned as Marcus made his rounds. He had just finished wiping down the cafeteria tables when he heard soft footsteps echoing from the gymnasium. At first, he thought maybe one of the teachers had forgotten something, or maybe a student had slipped in through the side entrance. With a sigh, he pushed his mop bucket aside and made his way down the dimly lit hall. The gym doors loomed ahead, heavy and metal, the kind that echoed like thunder when shut too hard. Marcus pushed one open, the hinges groaning in protest. The gym was dark, almost pitch black except for the faint glow of the emergency exit signs. His eyes scanned the bleachers. Empty. The basketball court gleamed faintly, polished wood reflecting the dull red light of the exit signs. He was about to call out when his gaze froze on something unusual. At the far end of the court, near the wall, something crouched low, unmoving. The figure looked small, like a child, but its posture was wrong, too stiff, too deliberate. Even in the dim light, Marcus could feel its gaze locked onto him. His heart thudded. He called out, trying to keep his voice steady, "Hey! You're not supposed to be here." The figure didn't move, didn't flinch, just stared. Marcus rubbed his eyes, thinking maybe it was a trick of the shadows. But when he looked again, the thing was gone. The court was empty, as though nothing had ever been there. He let out a shaky breath, shaking his head at his own nerves. "You're just tired, old man," he muttered, and turned to leave. But that night, as he locked up, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The sound of those phantom footsteps replayed in his head. The next morning, when he came in early to check on the gym, his stomach dropped. Across the glossy wooden floor were footprints, muddy, wet, and small, like those of a child. They started at the gym doors and led straight to the middle of the court. But what chilled Marcus most was the way they ended. No return trail, no smudge or smear, just a final footprint in the center of the court, and then nothing, as if whoever, or whatever, had made them had simply vanished into thin air. Rosa had been working as a janitor in the city hospital for nearly a decade, and while the long night shifts drained her, she never complained. She liked the stillness of the building when the bustling daytime chaos faded away, the hurried footsteps of doctors, the chatter of families, the cries of newborns replaced by the steady hum of fluorescent lights and the faint squeak of her cleaning cart. But there was one place Rosa dreaded, the old psychiatric wing. The hospital had officially closed that section years ago, citing outdated facilities. The heavy metal doors were kept locked, and staff rarely spoke of it, brushing off questions with vague answers. Rosa never had reason to go near it, until that night. She was scrubbing the tiled floor near the wing when she heard voices. At first, she thought it was the television left on somewhere, or maybe nurses gossiping in a nearby room. But as she stopped and tilted her head, she realized the sound was coming from the locked ward. The whispers were muffled at first, like several people speaking at once, but then they became clearer, two distinct voices, low and urgent, as if in conversation. Her heart raced. No patients had been kept there for years. She slowly pushed her mop aside and crept closer, each step echoing in the silent corridor. When she pressed her ear against the cold steel door, the voices fell silent. Then came the dragging. It was faint but unmistakable, a slow scrape, like something, or someone, crawling across the floor inside. Rosa's stomach twisted. The sound grew louder, closer, until it stopped directly on the other side of the door. She stumbled back, her mop clattering to the tiles. The corridor stretched around her, too empty, too quiet, and she suddenly wished she had never listened in the first place. Later, still shaken, she confided in one of the night nurses, a woman who had been at the hospital long enough to remember the wing's final days. The nurse's face drained of color as Rosa described what she had heard. Finally, the woman leaned closer and whispered, "There was a patient, years ago. He used to drag himself across the floor at night, fingernails tearing until his hands bled. They said he was trying to dig his way out. He died in that ward." The story should have been enough to keep Rosa away forever. But she was assigned to that corridor again the following night. Forcing herself not to look at the heavy door, she pushed her cart quickly past, until her breath caught in her throat. On the glass window of the locked ward door, faint but undeniable, were smears. Fingerprints. Bloody ones. Long streaks trailing downward, as though someone had pressed their hands against the glass from inside and dragged them slowly down. Rosa froze, paralyzed, her mop water sloshing onto the floor. She knew no one had access to that ward. The prints weren't there the day before. Eddie had never been picky about work. Bills piled up fast, and when the office building downtown offered a janitorial position with decent pay, he jumped at the chance. It wasn't glamorous, but it was steady. Besides, he figured cleaning offices at night couldn't be worse than some of the warehouse shifts he'd done before. He quickly learned, however, that the building felt different after hours, too quiet, too polished, like it was hiding something beneath its shiny glass walls and spotless tile floors. The first few weeks passed without incident. Eddie grew used to the routine: empty trash bins, vacuum carpets, wiped down desks. But sometimes, in the dead of night, he caught odd reflections in the building's floor-to-ceiling windows. Once, he thought he saw someone walking behind him when no one was there. Another time, he swore he heard high heels clicking down the hall, echoing closer, only to stop the moment he turned around. One night, while making his rounds on the 14th floor, Eddie wheeled his cart to the end of the hall. That's when he saw her. A woman in a red dress, standing unnaturally still, her face half hidden in shadow. At first, he thought she might be an employee burning the midnight oil. He even started to raise a hand in greeting, until he blinked. She was closer, not by much, but enough to make his stomach knot. She hadn't moved. He hadn't looked away for more than a second, yet the distance between them had shrunk. Her outline was strange too, blurred, as though he were looking at her through smeared glass. Can I help you?" Eddie's voice cracked. No answer, just silence. His pulse quickened. He bent down, pretending to fuss with the trash cart, but when he looked up again, she was closer still. He hadn't even heard footsteps. Her face was clearer now, or it should have been. Instead, it looked wrong, like someone had taken an eraser to her features. A smudged blur where eyes and mouth should be. Panic surged. Eddie abandoned the cart and sprinted toward the stairwell, the slap of his sneakers echoing off the walls. He didn't dare look back, but the sound of soft heels clicked against the floor behind him, steady, unhurried, closing the distance. He threw himself into the stairwell, bounding down flights two at a time, lungs burning. By the time he burst through the lobby doors, sweat soaked his shirt. The building was empty, the night guard's desk unattended. He leaned against the glass entrance, gasping for breath, then froze. In the reflection of the glass doors, she was there. Right behind him, the red dress vivid, her faceless head tilted slightly, as if amused. He spun around. The lobby was empty. Eddie quit the next morning, refusing to ever step foot in the building again. Yet, even years later, the memory lingered. Sometimes, when he stood before a mirror or glanced at the reflection in a darkened window, he swore he saw it, the flash of a red dress standing just behind him, waiting.